Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Dayami and these are the headlines. In Iran, Ibrahim Raisi, a judge who is subject to US sanctions, has won the presidential election. According to the preliminary results, Raisi received over 17.8 million votes, followed by Mohsen Rezai with 3.3 million. Conceding defeat, all other candidates have congratulated the newly elected president. Meanwhile, Amnesty International said Raisi should be investigated for alleged crimes against humanity. Prime Minister Imran Khan says Pakistan will not allow the US to use its military bases for future operations in Afghanistan. He made these remarks during an interview with American channel HBO. Earlier, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said the US should systematically withdraw from Afghanistan to prevent anarchy, civil war and instability there. In Afghanistan, the Taliban have seized two districts in Jozjan and Faryab provinces as fighting rages amid withdrawal of the foreign troops. 16 security personnel were reportedly killed and several others detained during the clashes. Earlier in a statement, the Afghan military claimed to have killed 8 Taliban fighters in Jozjan. The Arab coalition in Yemen says it has destroyed 7 explosive-laden drones launched by the Houthis towards southern Saudi Arabia. In a statement, the coalition said the Houthis attempted to target Khamis Mushaid city in the latest strike. However, the Houthis claim they have successfully targeted King Khalid Air Base in Khamis Mushaid. Brazil has logged nearly 2,500 deaths from COVID-19 and more than 98,000 infections overnight. Meanwhile, Palestine has cancelled a deal with Israel to provide 1 million COVID-19 jabs as the doses were about to expire. In Pakistan, 27 people lost their lives to the virus, while nearly 1,000 tested positive in the last 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.84 million lives and infected nearly 178 million people so far. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now with the news in detail. In Iran, Ibrahim Raisi, a judge who is subject to US sanctions, has won the presidential election by landslide. According to the preliminary results, Raisi received over 17.8 million votes, followed by Mohsen Rezai with 3.3 million. Economist Nasser Hemati gained 2.4 million, while Amir Hussain Ghazizadeh Hashmi remained fourth with almost 1 million votes. The Interior Ministry data shows more than 28 million Iranians out of 59 million eligible voters cast their ballots. Conceding defeat, all other candidates, as well as Iran's current president Hassan Rouhani, have congratulated Raisi. Raisi has been Iran's judiciary chief since 2019 and has held several other posts in the country's judicial branch since the 1979 revolution. Meanwhile, Amnesty International said Raisi should be investigated for alleged crimes against humanity. And for more on this, we are joined by Dr. Fouad Izzadi, a political analyst from Tehran. Thank you very much for your time at Indus News. First of all, as Ibrahim Raisi is labeled as ultra-conservative, what foreign policy Iran would pursue under his rule, especially in nuclear deal revival talks and negotiations between Iran and Saudi Arabia?
He's going to start his presidency in about 1.5 months. And since he has promised a lot in terms of improving Iran's economy, he wants to see sanctions lifted. So I don't think he would not welcome an agreement with the United States on the JCPOA, the nuclear agreement. I think he would welcome it. He would also want to attract foreign investment. So he wants to create a setting where foreign investment is able to flourish inside the country. One of the promises that he made during the debates is working more with the neighborhood. Countries like Pakistan and Turkey and Iraq and others that Iran is a neighbor of. So I think you would see a more robust effort in terms of making sure that all economic and trade opportunities are exhausted when it comes to Iran's neighbors. And given the sanctions, working with the neighbors is going to be easier because of shared borders. So that's going to be one of his other priorities. Overall, he belongs to the school of thought that is generally described as the welfare state, caring for the poor and sort of looking towards the lower segments of society and taking care of that segment more. This is how the Islamic Revolution in 1979 started. And the main supporters of the revolution were the lower segments of society. So on his agenda would be helping that segment and making sure that the traditional supporters of the Islamic Republic continue to do so.
So, Dr. Fouad, how do you see future ties between Washington and Tehran, as Raisi would be the first serving Iranian president sanctioned by the U.S. government?
You know, because of so many sanctions that we have, you can hardly find any top official that is not sanctioned by the United States. So, you know, they have been sanctioning Iran for 40 years and they have run out of people to sanction. So we have some people who have been sanctioned more than once, in fact. And Iran-US relations very much depends on the United States. If they want to keep the failed policies of the past, if they want to keep Trump's sanctions on Iran, if they want to put pressure on Iran to change its foreign policy or defense policy, then Iran-US relations will look like what we have it today, lots of difficulties. But they have an opportunity to change course, given the fact that all these sanctions and pressures have not worked in the last 42 years. They can change their policy towards Iran. They have an opportunity to have a clean return to the nuclear agreement without other things that they want. And if they decide to do that, then I think they will find a receptive president in Iran in the Raisi administration. But if they want to continue the old policies, I think you'll see confrontation between Iran and United States as we go forward.
So, Dr. Fouad, considering the fact that Israel has flared up proxies against Iran, how do you view the regional security contours under Raisi?
You know, Iran has said very clearly that Iran supports any Palestinian group that is fighting for liberation with military support. We have a number of Muslim countries that support Palestinians rhetorically. The difference between Iran is that Iran is willing and able to support them militarily, because we have seen that unless the Palestinians are able to defend themselves militarily, this occupation will continue, and there is no end to it. The apartheid state in Israel needs to end, and Iran is able and willing to help with that regard. With other neighbors, Iran's policy has been to reduce tensions and increase cooperation. Iran and Pakistan, for example, have had long-standing cultural and economic ties. And as I said, Mr. Raisi would look forward to improve those ties. Similar thing is true with regard to some of the neighbors that we have had difficulties. For example, the Saudis. Iran's foreign policy does not want to see the continuation of these tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So I think he would look forward to reducing tensions. And as you know, Iran and Saudi Arabia are talking. They have held a number of rounds of talk. So overall, I think Mr. Raisi wants to have lower tensions internationally so he can dedicate more of his time to economic problems internally.
Dr. Fawad Ezadi, thank you very much talking to Indus News. We really appreciate that. And now moving on, Pakistan says it will not allow the US to use its military bases for future operations in Afghanistan. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan made these remarks during an interview with HBO. The host asked Khan if he will allow the CIA to conduct cross-border counter-terrorism missions once the US withdraws from Afghanistan. The Prime Minister said absolutely not. Khan's remarks come amid reports that the US spy agencies seek new proxies after NATO troops leave by 11th of September. Earlier, Pakistan's foreign minister said the US should systematically withdraw from Afghanistan to prevent civil war and instability there. In an interview, Shah Mahmood Qureshi warned that Afghanistan may face the situation it had experienced in the 1990s. In Afghanistan, the Taliban have seized 2 districts in Jozjan and Faryab provinces as fighting rages amid withdrawal of the foreign troops. 16 security personnel were reportedly killed and several others detained during the clashes. Over 30 districts have fallen to the group since May. Earlier, in a statement, the Afghan military claimed to have killed 8 Taliban fighters in Jozjan. Violence in Afghanistan has significantly risen as uncertainty deepens over the future of the war-torn country. Pakistan says India has violated international laws by repealing the special status of occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In an interview, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said India unilaterally and illegally changed the valley's demographic structure. Qureshi said Islamabad suspects that India wants to convert the state's Muslim majority into a minority. He deplored that New Delhi has put the region of around 12 million people under military siege. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Foreign Office rejected India's misrepresentation of the International Court of Justice's judgment in the case of Indian spy Kulbhushan Jadhav. In a statement, it said Islamabad chose to provide Jadhav the right of review by the country's superior courts, but New Delhi's refusal to avail the legal remedies revealed their nefarious designs to undermine Pakistan's efforts. Ross-serving terrorist commander is facing death penalty over charges of espionage and terrorism in Pakistan. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says Asia is the continent of the 21st century. He was speaking at the Regional Cooperation in Asia event at Antalya Diplomacy Forum. Qureshi said Asia's role as an economic hub is undeniable, and people know that history will be written here. Qureshi also met his Kuwaiti counterpart, Sheikh Ahmed Nasir Al Muhammad Al Sabah, in Antalya. During the meeting, the foreign minister welcomed the easing of visa restrictions for Pakistani nationals. Qureshi reaffirmed Pakistan's desire to forge stronger relations with Kuwait in food security. Meanwhile, Qureshi and his Malaysian counterpart, Hishamuddin Hussain, pledged to strengthen their economic and defense partnership. During a meeting, they also discussed the well-being of the Pakistani community in Malaysia. The Arab coalition in Yemen says it has destroyed 7 explosive-laden drones launched by the Houthis towards southern Saudi Arabia. In a statement, the coalition said the Houthis attempted to target Khamis Mushayt city in the latest strike. However, the Houthis claim they have successfully targeted King Khalid Air Base in Khamis Mushayt. Earlier, U.S. envoy for Yemen, Tim Lenderking, noted the need for the Yemeni government to return to the city of Aden as soon as possible. Lenderking recently returned from Saudi Arabia, where he held multiple meetings with all stakeholders. In a statement, the State Department said Lenderking highlighted the importance of swift progress in the implementation of the Riyadh Agreement. The U.S. is pulling missile defense systems, military hardware and personnel from Saudi Arabia and other countries in the Middle East. In a statement, Pentagon says some of these assets will be returned to the U.S. for much-needed maintenance. A Pentagon spokesperson says some of them will be redeployed to other regions. The spokesperson said Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin instructed the commander of the U.S. Central Command to remove the forces this summer. The U.S. bolstered military footprint in Riyadh after an attack in 2019 on Aramco facilities that disrupted the global oil supply. Meanwhile, it sent Patriot missile batteries into Iraq to defend U.S. forces following the killing of Iran's General Qasem Soleimani. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Brazil has logged nearly 2,500 deaths from COVID-19 and more than 98,000 infections overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.84 million lives and infected nearly 178 million people so far. Let's take a look at this report.
As Brazil's official death toll approaches 500,000, the Senate is probing whether President Jair Bolsonaro deliberately delayed securing timely supplies of vaccines. While some epidemiologists say Brazil's real figure is significantly higher. Bolsonaro argues official death toll from his own health ministry is greatly exaggerated. Over in the north, Canada has extended border restrictions on non-essential travel with U.S. until July 21st. In the U.S., President Joe Biden took a cautious victory lap as he announced that 300 million vaccine shots have been administered in the 150 days since he took office.
And the truth is that deaths and hospitalizations are drastically down in places where people are getting vaccinated. But unfortunately, cases and hospitalizations are not going down in many places in the lower vaccination rate states. They're actually going up in some places.
Italy has introduced mandatory 5-day quarantine for visitors from Britain as concerns grow over a highly contagious Delta variant that is spreading there. In the Netherlands, face masks will mostly no longer be required and other restrictions will ease from next week after a drop in cases. Meanwhile, AstraZeneca said the European Union lost a legal case over the vaccine supply as the court rejected bloc's request for more deliveries by the June end. Over in Palestine, health authorities cancelled a deal with Israel to provide 1 million COVID-19 jabs as the doses were about to expire.
After an examination by the Health Ministry staff of the first Pfizer vaccine shipment that was received today from Israel and that made up around 90,000 doses, it was found that they did not meet specifications in the agreement. Prime Minister Mohammad Shatayyeh instructed the Health Minister to cancel the vaccine exchange agreement with Israel and to return today's shipment to Israel.
In India, more than 1,600 people lost lives and over 60,000 tested positive in the last 24 hours. Meanwhile, World Health Organization voiced alarm over surging cases across Africa as more contagious variants spread amid dangerously low vaccination rates.
Pakistan says the country is set to receive fresh supplies of COVID-19 vaccines from tomorrow. A top health official said the government has placed emergency orders for fresh supplies to overcome a countrywide jabs shortage. In an interview, Faisal Sultan added that the country is slated to receive around 7 million doses by the end of June, mainly from China. He noted that the situation will be normalized from Monday after the arrival of fresh supplies. The country has reported 27 deaths from coronavirus in the last 24 hours, the lowest since March 21. Overall, Pakistan has recorded almost 22,000 deaths and more than 947,000 cases since the pandemic began. Pakistan joins the international community in commemorating the day for the elimination of sexual violence in conflict. This International Day reaffirms the principle of a universality of all human rights which apply in conflict areas and occupied territories.
In a statement, Pakistan's Foreign Office said the Kashmiri women face sexual violence at the hands of Indian forces. It said sexual violence even against children in occupied Kashmir has drastically increased since the 5th of August 2019. The office called on the international community to take note of the crimes against Kashmiris and urged India to respect United Nations resolutions. Meanwhile, the United Nations said sexual violence in conflict is an abhorrent crime that is often underreported and must end. United Nations Special Representative Pramila Patten said sexual violence has been used as a tactic of war throughout history. The UN held a virtual event in line with the 2015 resolution to express solidarity with the survivors of sexual violence.
As multiple crises shift the ground beneath us, we must seize this opportunity to build back better by tackling the root causes of sexual violence in conflict. In this transformative moment, we must aim high. Survivors must be heard and heeded by national authorities and policymakers as part of an intersectional, gender-responsive pandemic recovery.
According to the United Nations, the coronavirus pandemic has further compounded the inequalities this year.
The United Nations has called for all member states to prevent the flow of arms into Myanmar. This is part of the UN General Assembly's non-binding resolution to condemn the military coup. The UN also urged the military to respect the November election results and release all political detainees. The UN Special Envoy on Myanmar, Christine Bergner, warned of a possible large-scale civil war. Meanwhile, Myanmar's envoy, Kya Mo-tun, regretted that the body was not more explicit about an arms embargo. The bill was supported by 119 countries, while Belarus opposed and other 36 abstained, including Russia and China. According to an advocacy group, the military has killed at least 870 civilians since it seized power on February 1st. North Korea's Kim Jong-un has promised to navigate his country out of the economic crisis. Kim made these remarks at his party's Central Committee meeting in Pyongyang. State media says Kim has appointed new members of the powerful Politburo of the ruling Workers' Party. During earlier sessions, he acknowledged food shortages and urged officials to prepare for both dialogue and confrontation with the U.S. Kim's remarks came as U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Sung Kim, arrived in South Korea. During his 5-day stay, he will hold talks with the Japanese and South Korean counterparts over stalled nuclear diplomacy. Nigeria's army says a student from a group of dozens abducted from a school this week has been found dead. In a statement, an army spokesperson said troops found female student's body in the forest. He said the army has also rescued 5 students and 2 teachers after an exchange of fire with the kidnappers. The spokesperson added the troops have also recovered 800 stolen cattle. Gunmen raided the school in Kebbi State on 17th of June in the latest case of mass abductions in the region. A teacher said gunmen kidnapped more than 80 students for ransom. However, the police did not disclose the number of missing students, but said 5 teachers were abducted. In the U.S. city of Oregon, police have declared dueling protests by the Proud Boys extremist group and the anti-fascist Antifa a riot. This came after clashes between the two groups broke out at a local park. Witnesses said it was the largest gathering of Proud Boys seen in one place this year in the city. Both sides threw pepper spray and smoke flares and used mace to counter protesters. Police ordered both groups to leave the park after the brawl. It is not immediately clear if they made any arrests. In Argentina, thousands of protesters hit the streets of the capital Buenos Aires, demanding improved wages and financial relief. The protesters, comprising labor unions and activists, called for a strong welfare state. They spoke out against the country's international debt obligations. The ongoing coronavirus pandemic has made Argentina's already ailing economy worse. UN data shows the economy is expected to shrink around 12% this year, driving millions into poverty. Another business updates. Boeing Corporation 737 MAX 10 has successfully landed at Renton Municipal Airport near Seattle after its maiden flight. The 230-seat aircraft is expected to enter service in 2023. The jet is the largest member of Boeing's best-selling single-aisle aeroplane family. It is designed to close the gap between Boeing's 737-9 and Airbus's A321neo in terms of seats, but its market opportunity is constrained by a range of 3,300 nautical miles short of A321 Neos 4000. Boeing has to complete the plane safety certification under tougher regulations after 2 fatal crashes of a smaller 737 MAX version. In the Pakistan Super League, Karachi Kings are batting against Quetta Gladiators after winning the toss at Sheikh Zayed Stadium in Abu Dhabi. A win for Karachi side will cement their place in the playoffs, while a defeat will eliminate them from the tournament. Quetta have already been eliminated from the race to the PSL playoffs. In today's other game, Islamabad United will take on Multan Sultans. Earlier, Sultans beat Lahore Qalandars by 80 runs to continue their winning streak in the Abu Dhabi leg of the tournament. India's sprint great Milkha Singh has died from COVID-19 at the age of 91. He bagged 4 Asian gold medals and finished 4th in the 400 meters final at the 1960 Rome Olympics. Singh, also dubbed the Flying Singh, passed away at a hospital in the northern Indian city of Chandigarh. His death comes days after his wife, former India volleyball captain Nirmal Kaur, had died due to similar reasons. Following his death, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the country had lost a colossal sportsman. In a tweet, Modi said the athlete inspired millions and had a special place in the hearts of countless Indians. And now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.